Welcome to this explainer. We're jumping right into a quiet revolution happening in Myanmar today, and it's one that is completely rethinking how we respond to human suffering. We're witnessing a massive paradigm shift that's literally going to define the future of Christian ministry in conflict zones. It's a move away from that traditional reactionary charity toward a highly principled, systematic, and dignified social ministry. And it's all laid out in the meta-aid framework, which really takes a hard look at how aid is delivered in the midst of socioeconomic collapse.
Right out of the gate, we have to grapple with a pretty uncomfortable question. Is our assistance just good intentions? And is that really enough? For decades, the default mindset in humanitarian circles has kind of been that having a good heart and wanting to help is all you need. But when the scale of a crisis hits the levels we're seeing today, good intentions alone can actually fall terribly short. In fact, they can sometimes cause unintentional harm.
So, to unpack this transformation, here is our roadmap for today. We'll cover the crisis and the church, the limits of good intentions, 3 new core principles, smarter aid on the ground, and finally the future of ministry. Let's dive in.
Section 1. Crisis and the Church. Functioning as the ultimate safety net.
You know, the source material absolutely praises the heroic, grassroots efforts happening right now. Local churches and faith-based organizations are stepping up with incredible sacrifice. They are the first and last safety net, providing immediate relief in areas where large international NGOs just can't operate because of security constraints. They're the true first responders. But being a permanent safety net takes a massive toll, and this kind of reactionary phase has to be the foundation, not the ceiling, of effective ministry moving forward.
And that creates a really fascinating duality. On the one hand, you have these undeniable strengths, right? Deep grassroots reach, community trust, and a super fast response time. But on the flip side, operating in isolation leads to a severe lack of coordination. It turns into a short-term firefighting approach, where you're just putting out immediate fires rather than building up any long-term resilience. And honestly, the most critical weakness is often a distinct lack of conflict sensitivity.
Which brings us to Section 2, the limits of good intentions and their hidden costs.
So what happens when we rely solely on good intentions? Well, without a systematic approach, well-meaning aid can actually be pretty destructive. There are 3 big hidden costs here. First is relief dependency. Endless handouts without an exit strategy just erode local resilience. Second is unintentional harm. If you aren't completely transparent about who gets aid and why, you're going to spark social friction and resentment between communities. And third, and this is absolutely crucial for the future of Christian ministry, is conditioned faith. Using aid as bait for evangelism completely compromises human dignity. It strips away free choice and turns a gift into a transaction.
Section 3. 3 new core principles: bridging theology and aid.
To solve those profound issues, the framework completely rethinks social ministry through 3 guiding principles. First up is Imago Dei, recognizing the inherent human dignity in everyone. When we embrace this, the entire narrative flips. We're no longer handing down pity to helpless victims. We're elevating equals. We are respecting the dignity of every single survivor because they are created in the image of God. That changes everything about how aid is delivered.
The second principle is impartiality, which is perfectly modeled by the parable of the Good Samaritan. This means our resources have to transcend our own borders. It shifts the core question from who belongs to our church to who is actually suffering the most right now. Assistance must be based strictly on vulnerability, full stop.
And the third principle is do no harm. This is a pretty urgent realization. If we aren't hyper-aware of the context we're operating in, our aid can literally become a weapon, or a target, or a source of deep division. Making conflict sensitivity an absolute operational necessity ensures that our good intentions don't accidentally endanger aid workers or the very people we're trying to help.
Section 4. Smarter aid on the ground. Let's look at how we take this theory and put it into practice.
It all starts with the data. Before handing out a single item, ministries have to conduct a systematic needs assessment. First, demographics. You need to know exactly who is affected by tracking gender, age, and disabilities. Second, you look at sectoral needs. Do they need water, shelter, psychosocial support? And third, you evaluate the context in the local markets. Are the roads even safe? Are the markets functioning? Because if local markets are working, that completely changes how you should deliver aid.
And since aid resources are literally always limited, how do you choose who gets help without looking biased? You use an objective matrix. It acts as armor against accusations of favoritism. By prioritizing female-headed households, the elderly, young families, people with disabilities, and those with destroyed homes, you can prove exactly why certain people were selected, totally guaranteeing transparency.
Finally, Section 5, the future of ministry and a vision for tomorrow.
This is where the future of Christian ministry is truly heading. Future ministries have to conduct do-no-harm audits before acting. They need to be community-led, meaning local, inclusive committees are making the decisions, not top-down directors. And a real game changer here is utilizing cash and voucher assistance. Instead of handing someone a generic bag of rice, you give them a voucher. It essentially says, "We trust you to know what your family needs most." Add in multi-faith networks to share resources and trauma-informed support, and you have a deeply holistic, modern approach.
Now, making this kind of shift is a massive undertaking, but the source material notes that organizations don't have to navigate it alone. MetaAid offers free consultations to help embed these exact best practices into everyday operations, making the transition to a principled approach as seamless as possible. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought as we look toward the future. Are we content with just being a temporary safety net, endlessly putting out fires? Or are we ready to embrace these principles and step up to be a lasting beacon of dignity and hope? The blueprint is definitely here. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.